Well, hi guys, welcome back to Osego Codes, where we dream the code and code the dream. So, in today's video, we are going to deliver a part 2, which is a continuation of the part 1 that we did last week. If you remember last week, we built a simple Express API, and then we went ahead to connect it to a database. And the database that we used was MongoDB on the cloud on a platform called Atlas, which is a data platform for developers. Now, in today's video, we are going to build a simple CRUD application so that we can actually understand and get to know how you can persist your app data to a database. And when I talk of CRUD, I mean we are going to create, read, delete, and update our records or documents from a database. Now, if we want to persist data to our database, we need to have a data model or what we call a schema. So a schema is simply, in other terms, what we call the shape of the data. For example, if we're talking of a post or we're building a blog application will have entities like the posts, the comments, the likes, and the dislikes. Now, a good example, let's use the post entity. So for a post, we need a post title, a post body, a post excerpt, image, and the author. And for example, when we talk of the post title, we want to tell the user the type of data that we accept. For example, it should be a string only. Should it be an int? Also, is it required or not required? Is it optional? And when we talk of even the author, is the author default? If we talk of the post body, do we have a default data or we have specific details that we want to constrain the data to, so that this one will sanitize our data so that whenever a user comes to our system and creates a post, the data that the user posts should conform to what we have in the schema. The number of characters for the title. If it's required, it means the user should not leave it blank. If you got something like email should be unique by user. So we want to give it conditions and rules that should be adhered to. For example, if you talk of username, you cannot have a username that's being shared by more than one user. Each user should have a unique username. So this is what we call data modeling, where we tell or define the rules that should be applied whenever we create a new document or a new entity. So this is what we're going to do today in this video. We're going to build the data. Once we build the data, we are going to actually now implement the controllers that will be able to interact with the model to persist data to the database. Delete, create, update, and get the data. So as you all know, we're using Express for our application, and Express uses an architecture called MVC, where we'll have our models, the views, and the controllers. So in this video, we want to focus on the model and the controllers. So the model is basically the logical structure of the data. The controller defines the functions that should be used to get query data from the database. And then on the view part will come later, where we can either choose to use web frameworks like Vue.js, React.js, or Next.js, or use those other templates like the blade templates, handlebars, and any other that we have ready to be used. So join me, guys, in this video as we build our first CRUD application, and I hope you're going to like it. And okay, so I'm going to launch our Visual Studio Code because we want to pick up from where we left last time. So here is my Visual Studio. Should be up and running by now. Yeah. So our app is launched, and we can now try and build. So first of all, I'm going to zoom in so that you can actually get to see the code that I'm writing. I think that's okay. So in the last video, we created a simple API using Express and also connected our API to a database. And just a quick recap of what we did. We built a simple server in the server.js file here. As you can see, simply import express from express the .env variables. All the imports come on top. Then you configure your .env, initialize your port number, initialize the express app. Then if you have some middlewares, you pass them here. But yeah, if you have some middlewares, you pass them here. Then you call the connect.db function, which is coming from dbconnect.js file, which is in the utils folder here. So here you simply import mongoose and .env, configure the .env package, then initialize the Mongo URI. Then here you have the functions and hooks which are used to connect to the database. Then you export it here. So remember, it's a function. That's why when you come back to our server here, we are actually calling it as connect.db. Then you invoke it. Then this one is just to test for our application. If it is up and running, of course, you want to test that now. So what I'm going to do, I will have I will first run my server, clear everything, then npm run dev. So we should have our server up and running. Great. We're connected to the Atlas cluster. So once we have our server up and running, the next thing we want to do, we want to have our models, controllers, and routes. So like I told you before, Express uses the MVC architecture, which is the model, view, and controller. So the model is basically where we define your data schema and the shape of the data. Then the controller is where you define all the functions that will be able to interact with the database through the model for us to create, read, update, and delete. Then you have the routes, which will give us the endpoints through which you can hit and execute a controller. So I'm going to also clear the terminal of this new terminal. Then I'm going to create 3 directories, that is the controllers, models, and routes. So using the terminal, they make dir, then controllers, models, and routes. So once you have that, you can see here we have controllers, models, and routes. So let's start with the model where we define the schema of the shape. So click on that. Then let's, because we are dealing with posts, type posts model.js. So in the post model, we want to import Mongoose. Remember I told you Mongoose is the ORM for Express and MongoDB. And then after importing Mongoose, we want to define the schema. So you can do something like const post schema post schema is equals to Mongoose is equals to new mongoose.schema, which accepts an object. Then now a post needs a title, a body, and an author. That's the basic post schema. So we have the title. Then now we want to give it some rules. For example, it should be of type string. It is required. Of course, you can't have a post without a title. So required should be set to true. Then some message there like post must have a title. So this message will be given to the user whenever he or she tries to create a post with no title. Then a post has also the post body. So the post body should also be of type string. Then required also should be set to true. Then some message like post must have a body. Then lastly, we can have the author. Now the author should be of type string also. And author is required because you can't have a post without its author. Required should be true. Then post must be associated to an author. Then also I want to give it a default author here. Let's say default. Then let's give it any name like Osego Codes. So I'm giving this name because in this video, I'm not going to implement the auth part or what we call the authentication and authorization part. I'm not going to do this in this video, and that is why I am having a default value here for the author. So each time I create a post and I don't provide the author, it will default to Osego Codes, but you can still provide it. You can ignore it even though it's required, but it will go through because you have the default one here. So once that is done, you now need to model that schema. So you can say something like const post equals to mongoose dot model, and you're modeling a post, then using the post schema. Using the post schema, exactly. Then we are exporting the post model. Export default post. Amazing. So let me explain once more again. So Mongoose is the ORM that we use to model data in Express and MongoDB. So if you want to have a schema, you first initialize the schema variable like const schema, then you instantiate an instance of Mongoose, then call the schema method, which accepts an object. So in the object, you will define the field and its rules. The field and its rules are the field and its rules. For example, title should be of type string and it's required, means you can't leave it as null or empty. Then we have the body. The body should be of type string, which is also required, means you can't leave it as null or empty. Author, which should also be of type string, required, which means you can't leave it empty. And for the author, we have an additional setting here is default, which means if you're creating a new post but you don't provide the author, it will default to Osego Codes. And then now you model the post schema by saying const post equals to mongoose.model, then the post, then post schema. Then what you do, you export default the post. After that, we now want to go to the controllers, where now we implement the logic, the functions that should be executed when an endpoint. So coming to controllers, you can create a new file, call it post controller.js. So here we simply create the functions for creating a post, deleting a post, finding a single post, updating a post. So what are we going to do in this case? So a new function and call it const create post. And since we are going to perform database operations, we want to make them async. So you will give it async, then an arrow function which requests an arrow function which accepts two parameters, a request and response parameter, then the block where your logic goes. So I want us to use the try and catch block so that we can handle our errors gracefully. So in the try catch block, I want us to initialize const. I want to structure what we accept: title, body, and author should be assigned to the what we call the request dot body. Remember, creating a post is a post request, which means whenever we're making that HTTP request, they're going to attach something to the body. And what you're attaching to the body is what I have structured here to the title, the body, and the author. Then I now want to have an instance of the post to be created. So you can have something like const post equals to, now we want to await this operation, await. Then we now need to import the model that we had defined earlier in the model post model.js file, and we named it post. So post, then it is imported up here, post dot create. So it should now pass the data which comes from the request body, which is title. Then we have the body, and then we have the author. So if this is successful, we want to send back a response like using the res.status, which is called 201, which means a new source has been created. .json. The JSON should accept an object, or you can say our status of the request success. Then data that's returned should be the new post that is created, which is post. Now, if we have an error, we want to handle it in the catch block. We can have something like res.status. Let's give it 500, something to do with server error .json. Then the status is fail. Then the message, you can have it as the error dot message. So that is it for creating a new post. So then how do we actually test this? We want to export this function because we're going to use it in the routes. So go back to your routes directory here and create a new file and name it postroutes.js. So here we have to import Express from Express. Then const router equals to Express dot router, because we now want to use the route handler that comes bundled in the Express. Then we want to export default that router. Then inside here we define our routes. So router dot route, and then the home route, then dot post. Remember, we are getting a new post, so it should be a post request dot post. Then here we need to pass the route handler, which is the controller that we have here, which means I have to export this function as a module. So coming here just before the const, you can have export const create post. Then you go back to your routes and then import it here, create post. Then if you check up here, it will be imported. What you need to do, just add .js there, and you're good to go. So once that is done, we can now go to our server file here and then import that route. Import, then give it something like a name like post routes.js. No, import post routes, import post routes from, it should be from the routes. Then how do we call it? Post routes.js. Then we want to add a new route here, or a middleware app.use API slash, so app.use API slash version 1 slash posts. Then we pass that post routes on that middleware. Then let's check our server if it's running. You can see our server is still running. So once that is done, we can now try and test our API if it is working great. So let me check my internet connection if it's okay. I see it's not okay, so let me connect to another one here. So that is fixed. I've fixed that internet, so you can see our service up and running. So we want to test our API at that point if it is okay. So what are we going to do? I will launch our HTTP client, which is Postman. So amazing. So once you have your Postman launched, you can create a new workspace. Then create a workspace there. Then just a blank workspace. Next, let's call it test. Then only me, personal, then create. Once you have a workspace created, you can create a collection. So let's say we have a post collection. So you create a collection, then under that collection is where you will have all your requests: get, post, delete, patch. So let me call this posts collection. So under this collection, we want to add a request. Click on add request. Then let's call the request create, or something like add post, short and clear. Then you can enter the URL here or the endpoint here. In this case, we will enter HTTP localhost port 8080 slash API slash version 1, then posts, then the home root. So this is the URL. So this URL is something you construct by yourself, especially this part that comes after the port, where we have API version 1, then posts. So API version 1 is important because suppose you're having a different versions of the API. You want to have version 1, version 2, version 3. That is what we're going to have. But remember, it's a post request. Then since it's a post, we need some body to be sent in the request with the request, and we're going to accept raw data JSON format. So what do we have? We need to create an object there. Should accept title. Then let's say it's something like introduction to web development. Then we also have the body. In the body, you can talk of anything. Let me just copy some dummy text from somewhere. Then you can copy anything here. Yeah. Copy. Then have that pasted in our body object there. Then finally, we need the author. Let's give it something like Osego codes. No, I want to give a different name from the default, like on do. Then after that, you simply send. Now you see we have our response here. Status is success. Then the data object where we have the title. Then we have the body, we have the author, and we have the ID and the version of that. So let's check in our Data Explorer, which is Atlas Data Explorer. So go back to Data Explorer, log in. You are signed in. You need to go to the database section. Once you are signed in, you need to come to the database section here. Click on database. Once you click on database, you will have another window. Then from there, you can click on browse collections. So click on browse collections. And remember, the name of our database was Mongo class. So we're going to check in Mongo class. So on the left pane here, you see all the databases here. Now ours is Mongo class. Click on Mongo class. Then you see we have already a collection here named posts. Clicking on that, we should have the post collection. You see we have two documents. This one I created earlier before, so I'll delete the first one that I created. Let me delete everything actually. Let me just delete everything. Delete. Then delete this one also. So as you can see, our post collection has 0 results. So what we're going to do, we're going to send this request again into to web development with the body and the author's John Doe. So let's click on send. It's created. So let's go back to our data explorer and then refresh. Where do you refresh? Here. Retrieving list of databases. And you can see we now have one document with the title Introduction to Web Development. Then the body, we have it there. The author, which we specified as John Doe. Now, that is it. Now let's go back and create or add another post. Let's say introduction to Vue.js. Then the body can be same, but now I want to do away with the author so that you can see how the default setting that I gave the model works. So in this case, because we don't have the author provided, it should pick up the default value which I gave it as Osego codes. So let's run this again, send. Now you see we have success status, then the data title, body, author is now Osego codes. But remember here we didn't specify the author. Going back to our data explorer here, then if we refresh, we should now have two documents. Now we have introduction to Vue.js. Web consists of that body, then the author is Osego codes. So that being done, the next thing that we want to do, we want to write a controller to retrieve all posts. So going back to our controller file, what do we need to do? Now we follow the same method, export const, then let's call it get posts async, then request and response parameter. Then you can say, yeah, actually let's use try and catch block. Then const posts equals to, let's await this operation, await post dot find with no any value being passed to the parameter, and then export const get post, then const post equals to await post dot find. And we want to say if there's no posts, return response dot status 404, which means not found, dot json, sorry, 44 dot json let's call it dot json. Then let's give it a custom message, no posts found. But if there's a post found, then we'll do something like res dot status of 200 code, which means everything is okay, dot json, sorry my typo is so weak, dot json, then status success, then the data is the posts object, posts, then maybe total number of posts, you can also get it from here, total, which is should be now posts dot length However, if there's an error, we do res dot status of code 500 dot json, then status is a fail, then message, you can pass some message using the error dot message. So that should be okay. Then now we go back to our routes here. Then we chain our method actually dot get. Then we pass that handler, the controller, the root handler. Now in this case, how do you call it? How did we call our function? Get posts. So come here, then just have get posts. Then it should be imported here. It will be imported up here. So now, once that is done, we go back to a postman and test our endpoint. So let's go here. In the post collection, add a new request. Add a new request, and let's name it get posts. Then also pass the URL here of the endpoint. So I'll do this, but instead, what I want to do now, I want to actually extract this common part here. So first create an environment. Add an environment. Let's call it that development environment. Then the variable is base URL. Then now we extract it here. So just come back here and copy this here, or you can cut it actually because we won't need it anymore. Then back to environment, add environment, call it dev. Then variable is base URL, the value, that current value same, then save. Once that is done, switch back here and click development environment. Coming back to getting posts, instead of having everything here, you can just call the variable, how do we call it, base URL. That's not okay. The other dev environment should work. Yeah, so we have base URL, then just type posts. So we want to get all posts, so send. Amazing. So what do we have here? Status is success, data, how many values do we have? 1, 2, total count 2, which means our endpoint is actually okay. Now once that is done, the next thing we want to do is to get a single post using maybe the ID. Back to post controller. Actually here now we can copy this and make changes because it's actually same thing. So instead of get posts, we need to get a post now. Then try const post equals to await post. Instead of posts, call it post. Then find by ID. Then inside here we pass the ID object, which should be coming from the request.params.id. Request.params.id. Then if there's no post, return no post found. Else, success, data should be the post itself instead of the post. Then you don't need any length here because it will be only one. The post, and then what follows here is okay. So what we need to do, coming back to our route, we need to create a new route which has a parameter, what we call a dynamic route. So a router that route, because we're dealing with a specific resource, we need to pass some kind of parameters like an ID. Now to pass a parameter in Express, you need to use the colon and the name of the parameter. Then now we want to get a single post. Now get, then we call that function or the route handler, which is now get post. That way, that is it. Now that is ready. So next thing we want to do is to test. Coming back to our postman. Actually, before we go to postman, we need to go back to our Atlas Explorer and pick an ID. So I'll click on this, copy that ID, go back to postman, then create a new request. Actually, I can save this one here. Save. This one will say post. Also save it. Now we need to add a new request. in the post collection, new request. The next request, we want to name it get post. Get post, then the base URL, then posts is the resource, then pass the ID as the parameter, request parameter. So how do we do that? Simply paste the ID that we copied from the Data Explorer here. Then hit to test what we have. Amazing, you see? We have a response here, status, success, data, the ID, and stuff. Let's try with another ID. Let's pick the first ID, copy, go back to Postman, change the ID here, send. What do we get? Intro to web development. That is okay. Next, we want to implement how to delete a post. Back to the post controller, copy everything we have here. We just make simple changes as we move. Copy. Then here we want to delete post. Then const post equals to await post dot find by ID and delete. And delete. Then of course we want to delete a specific resource, so we pass the ID object there. So if there's no post, then we can say there's no post found. For example, if the post is not there using that ID, we say the post not found. So if there's no post, return 404, then post not found. Post not found. Then if there's the post, we want to delete it. So when deleting, of course, we are having no content being returned. So it's a status code of 204 JSON. Then we can just give it only a message, post deleted. If there's an error, we want to catch it here. So that is it. So let's go back to our Postman and try and test if you can delete. So let's save this and then add a new request. New request is a delete post request. Delete post, which accepts the delete method. Same thing we've been doing again and again. Posts. But now we have to pass the ID as the parameter. So we can actually come back to our Data Explorer. We want to delete the first document, which says intro to web development. So just copy its ID and paste it in the URL here. Then hit send. I haven't defined the route. So back to our routes, we need to chain it dot delete. Then call the handler delete post. That is it. So if you go back to our Postman, that should work. So let's wait for it to connect. Amazing. So going back to Postman, let's now send our request. Now you see we have 204 no content and it has been deleted. To confirm that, let's go back to our Atlas Explorer and then refresh. At the moment we have 2 documents. If I refresh, we should be having only 1. Amazing, you see, the post with that ID is gone. Then lastly, we want to add a handler function to update our post. So copy what we have here. Then let's say it is supposed to update post. So to update post, we need to get export const update post, async requests response, then const post equals to await post dot find by ID and update. And updates. It should pop up there, update. Then now the update method accepts the ID or a specifier of the resource to be deleted and its replacement. So how do we do that? So we are going to delete by ID, update by ID actually. Then we also need to pass what we call the replacement object. So the replacement object, we can pass title, the body, and the author. And all these are coming from what we call the request body. So you can do what we did earlier before when getting a new post, const, then the structure, the request body, title, body, and author. And the author and the author request dot body. That is how you capture the title, body, and author. Then since we are updating, we need to pass some other options. What we call new should be true. It should return the updated post, not the previous one. Then also if you had some value that's set in our schema, you need to run them here. So run validators should also be set to true. Once you have that there, now we want to go ahead and confirm. If there's no post, return a response saying post not found. Now, if this the post, we need to actually return some response again. So status code of 200 with the status code of 200, rest of status 200 JSON. Then we can do status success, then data, actually the post. Can do away with the message. Once you have that, if there's an error, I want to catch it here. So let's wait for our API to connect. It's connected, then we can try and update the post that we have. But before that, you need to change this method of updating the post in our routes here. So let's do patch. Then how do you call it? The function update post. And that's good. So coming back to Postman, we want to update our post. So let me save this first. Then now add a new request. How do you name the request? Update post. Then it's a method of patch. Then the same thing we've been doing, base URL posts, then an ID. So at the moment you only have a single document. Let's refresh. And I want you to take note of the title of the document. Introduction to Vue.js. Now this is what we want to change. Now I will grab the ID and append it in the URL. Then we need the request body, which should be in the raw format, and JSON. So I would only want to change the title and something like welcome to my YouTube channel. Then if I send this, what do we have? Success, and then the data, which is now the newly updated data, which is welcome to my YouTube channel. Now if we go back to our data explorer here and refresh, take note that it is still introduction to Vue.js, but if I refresh, it should reflect welcome to my YouTube channel. Amazing, welcome to my YouTube channel. So that is it for this video. As you can see, we have had the CRUD application ready. So basically we have what we call create, which is the C. Then we have get post, which is the read. Also getting a single post is the read. Then we have delete, which is the D in the CRUD. Then we have the update, which is the U in the update. So just a recap of what we are doing. You need just to define your schema using the Mongoose ORM. Then you initialize the post schema and then instantiate the Mongoose class and call the schema method, which accepts an object as title, which are the fields of your data, the validations like type of string, body string required, and everything. Then you model now the schema using the mongoose.model post, then post schema, then you export that. Then you go to the controller. Now the controller should have all the functions that defines on how we are going to query data from our database. So the Mongoose ORM comes with methods that help you manipulate data. For example, create allows you to add new data. We have find, which allows you, the find with no parameters allows you to return all documents in a collection. Then we have find by ID to find a single document. Of course, now you have to pass the ID, which is in the request parameters. Then we have find by ID and delete. You have to pass the ID too. And same thing to the update where you have to pass the ID. Once that is done, you have to construct your URLs in the post routes. Now, for the general URLs like the post and create, the post and the get all posts, they don't need access to the ID because they are fetching all documents for the get, and the post sends it to the database. So there's no need for the ID. The ID in that case will be generated by the MongoDB itself. But for to get a single post, delete and update, you need to specify the resource that needs to be updated. And we can do that using a unique identifier like the object ID. That is why we pass it as a parameter. Then you need to export your router. Now going back to your server.js file here, you need to import the root file, which is import post routes from routes post routes.js. Then define a middleware here, upload use API version 1/post. So this means that all those URLs will be appended in our post here. For example, http localhost 8080/API version 1/post/ then the IDs and stuff. Then you pass that file name here. So it will bring in all the functions that are in the routes. Then that is it for this video. So thank you for watching this video once again, and stay tuned for the part 3 of this video where we are going to build a Vue.js application for the front end and connect our CRUD application to a Vue.js front end. So thank you once more for watching this video. Bye. So that was it for this video. Thank you for watching till the end, guys. So if you like this video, kindly like, subscribe, comment, and even share with your friends. And remember, in the next episode, we are going to introduce the front end for this application, where we are going to use Vue.js to connect our backend to our front end so that you can actually get to see how you can actually have your backend program or application connected to a front end application so that you have something that we call a full stack application. So guys, thank you for watching. Share this video, like and subscribe. Osego Codes signing out.